The daughter-in-law. Thakur Beni Madhav Singh was a landlord and headman of Gauripur. His forefathers were at one time very prosperous. The village tank and temple were monuments to their name and fame. In those days, several majestic elephants were seen swaying their stately tusks outside the door of their ancestral house, where today, alas, there was only one single lean and lank cow. But it appears the latter yielded a large supply of milk, for someone was always seen standing with a milking can near her. Beni Madhav Singh had made a present of more than half of his property to the pleaders. His yearly revenue now amounted to about 1,000 rupees. He had two sons, Shrikant, a graduate who was employed in an office in Allahabad. The other was Lal Bihari Singh, a strong, strapping youth who daily breakfasted on 2 seer of milk. The elder brother had sacrificed his health to acquire the two magical alphabets BA. The result was a wan face and a weak figure. That is why he had a special fondness for and faith in medicinal herbs. This was borne out by the musical sound of pestle and mortar emerging from his room, and by the constant correspondence which he kept up with the leading physicians of Lahore and Calcutta. Shrikant, in spite of his English education, however, did not approve of many of the modern manners and morals of the West. He was therefore highly respected in the village for his orthodoxy. On the occasion of the Dashera, for instance, he would plunge himself heart and soul into the festivities and play some role too in the dramatization of some scenes from the Ramayana. For the most important part of his religion was his admiration for ancient Hinduism. He was also an advocate of the joint family system. He considered the present day tendency of the young educated women in the Hindu households to live apart as harmful both to the community and to the nation. For his old fashioned views consecutively, not only did the young women of the village, including his own wife, criticize him, but some of them even looked upon him as their enemy. His wife, however, did this not because she detested her husband's people, but because she held that, if notwithstanding the spirit of give and take, there was no possibility of peace and harmony in the house, it was much better to set up separate kitchens. Anandi, wife of Shrikant, came from a respectable family. Her father Bhoop Singh was a landholder who owned a small estate, a mansion to live in, an elephant, 3 dogs, hawks, honorary magistracy. He had all these, besides a heavy debt to pay to boot. He was genial and generous by disposition, but as ill luck would have it, he had no son, though he had been blessed with 7 daughters, all of whom were living. The manners of the first 3 were celebrated with eclat, but when he discovered that the resultant debt had mounted to the vicinity of 20,000 rupees, he carried halt to his extravagance. Anandi was his fourth daughter. She was more beautiful in body and soul than all her other sisters, and so she was a great favorite of her father. He was, however, on the horns of a dilemma as to whether to get her married, for he did not wish to add any more to his monetary burden, nor did he desire that his daughter should feel that she was a Cinderella of the house. One day Shrikant went to him for a donation to some cause. Bhoop Singh was highly pleased with his behavior, and so subsequently gave his daughter to him in marriage. When Anandi entered her husband's home, she was surprised to find there an atmosphere and environment different from those in which she had been brought up. The house had neither windows nor a tiled floor, nor were there any pictures on the walls. There was no garden in which she could promenade with her silken slippers. However, she soon adjusted herself to the new order of things, as if she had never lived in the lap of luxury. One day in the afternoon, Lal Bihari Singh brought home two sparrows and asked his sister in law to cook them up into a delicious dish. Anandi, who had been waiting for him to take his lunch, complied with his wishes. But to her great dismay, she found that the quantity of clarified butter left over in the pantry was not sufficient for seasoning every dish. She therefore used the little that was there in cooking the meat. When Lal Bihari sat down to take his food, he discovered that the pulse had no clarified butter in it. "Why is there no butter in the pulse?" he roared. "Whatever was in the house was used up in cooking the meat," replied Anandi. "How could the whole quantity which was brought only day before yesterday be consumed so soon?" rejoined the former. "Today, however, there was only half a pound in the pantry," answered the latter. The hungry Lal Bihari flared up, just as a dry stick speedily burst forth into flames, and he observed, "Perhaps in your parental pantry there flows a perennial stream of clarified butter." Married women can stand abuse as well as the argument of the stick, but they cannot bear in silence any criticism of their father's family. "Yes," observed Anandi angrily, "in my father's home, even the hewers of wood and the drawers of water consume about a pound of clarified butter in a single day." Lal Bihari was beside himself with rage. He threw the plate of food on the floor and exclaimed, "I feel like taking out your tongue from your very mouth." Anandi too grew red in the face. She retorted, "I wish my husband were here today to have it out with you." Lal Bihari could not control himself any longer. He had, in a fit of anger, several times slapped his own wife, who was the daughter of a small landlord. So he took off one of the wooden sandals from his feet and, flinging it in the direction of Anandi, growled, "I shall see to you as well as to him on whose support you count so much." Anandi deftly parried the blow, but thought her head was saved from injury. Her hand was seriously hurt. Shaking with wrath like a leaf in the wind, she entered her room. A wife is always jealous of the good name of her husband. Anandi, therefore, pocketed the insult. Shrikant Singh used to visit his village every Saturday. The quarrel between Anandi and Lal Bihari had taken place on Thursday. Anandi did not take any food during the interval, for she was anxiously awaiting her husband's arrival. When Shrikant Singh came home, it was evening. He talked about miscellaneous matters with his co-villagers, such as court cases, etc., till 10 o'clock at night. When he entered his private apartment for dinner, just as he was about to go inside the house, Lal Bihari said to his brother, "Brother, tell sister-in-law to be a little more tongue-tied lest some harm might come to her." Beni Madhav Singh chimed in, "Yes, it is a part of prudence for daughter-in-laws to be respectful to the menfolk." Lal Bihari thereupon observed, "If hers is a respectable family, so is ours." Shrikant thoughtfully asked him, "But first, tell me what happened." Lal Bihari replied, "Nothing." She flared up without any rhyme or reason. "The fact is that she has not much respect for our family." After dinner, Shrikant went into his wife's room. She was sitting tense with rage. Seeing him with an angry mien, she said, "I hope all is well with you." Shrikant replied, I'm all right, but nowadays you seem to have set the whole house on fire. Anandi's blood began to boil. She retorted, if the person who has poisoned your ears were here, I would teach him a lesson of his life. Shrikant, but do not be so hot. Tell me what exactly has happened. Anandi, what shall I say? It is all my misfortune. Otherwise, the fellow who is not fit to work even as a peon would not have disgraced me by striking me with a wooden sandal. Shrikant, be more explicit, for I do not know anything. Anandi then truthfully told him all that has happened to other. Shrikant thereupon exclaimed, what an insolent and audacious lad! Anandi, according to the traditions of her tribe, burst into tears. Shrikant was quite calm, for he seldom gave way to anger. But tears of a wife add fuel to fire. The whole night he rolled in his bed from side to side with restlessness. Early in the morning he went up to his father and said, Father, it is now impossible to stay in the house any longer. In the past, Shrikant had often taken his friends to task for yielding too much to their wives, pleading for living separately from their parents. But today he himself was doing that very thing. Verily, it is easier to preach than to practice. So, Beni Madhav Singh was rather surprised and he asked why. Shrikant replied, because I too have my self respect. There is no longer any justice in your home. Those who should respect their elders insult them. I am a servant of another, and so I do not stay at home all through the week. During my absence, my wife is greeted with the strokes of sandals. I can tolerate a harsh word now and again, but I cannot help protesting against such merciless maltreatment. Beni Madhav remained silent, for he was dumbfounded to see his elder son, who had hitherto always been respectful, speaking in that strain. And he simply said, Son, you are so wise. Why do you talk like this? Do not yield to your wife in what she says, for it is thus that wives bring about the fall of families. Shrikant, you are aware, Father, how in the past I have been an ardent advocate, an instrument of peace in many a joint families of my friends. But I cannot bear such brutal ill treatment as has been melted out to my wife, for whose self respect I am responsible in the sight of God. By Lal Bihari. Suffice it to say that I am not punishing him in any way for his serious offense. Beni Madhav waxed wrathful and observed, Lal Bihari is your brother. Whenever he acts amiss, you can cuff him on the ears, but Shrikant, but I do not consider Lal Bihari as my brother. Beni Madhav, because of what your wife has told you? Shrikant, no, but because of his indiscretion and insolence. Both Beni Madhav and Shrikant were silent for some time. The former wanted to appease the latter, but was not willing to admit that Lal Bihari had done something wrong. In the meantime, a number of villagers come into the outer courtyard to pull a few puffs at the Thakur's hubble bubble. Some of the villagers' wives who heard of the new phrase in the domestic politics of Beni Madhav's family watched with keen curiosity further developments in the matter. There were others who, being jealous of the harmony in the home, were anxious to see a rift in the lute. They gathered there on the pretext of smoking and of showing their rent receipts. They twitted Shrikant on being too much under the thumb of his father. Beni Madhav saw through their ruse. He then and there determined in his mind that come what may, he would not let his family become their laughing stock. And he said to his son softly, We are not apart. The boy no doubt behaved badly. You can do with him what you like. Shrikant, who had graduated from the Allahabad University but not from the University of Experience, failed to understand the spirit of his father's conciliatory move. Having been an adept in the art of debating in the university union, he stuck to his position of parting from the family. Beni Madhav continued, Son, the wise do not act on the advice of fools. Lal Bihari is still a raw youth. You are a grown up, wise lad. You ought to pardon him for his offense. Shrikant did not, however, desist from his demand from living separately. He said, Either Lal Bihari will live in the house or I, but both of us cannot stay together in the same house. Lal Bihari was overhearing all that was transpiring between the father and his elder brother. Usually he was invariable, more respectful to the latter than to the former. Shrikant also loved him so much so that he had never knowingly wounded his feelings. On the occasion of last village wrestling match in which Lal Bihari had won, he had embraced him in the arena in the presence of the spectators, and as the largest distributed money among them, Lal Bihari therefore felt sad at what he had overheard that day from the lips of his elder brother, and he burst into a torrent of tears. No doubt he was also feeling penitent for what he had done in the heat of the moment. He was, it is true, somewhat dull witted, but all the same he felt that his brother was behaving both unjustly and unkindly towards him. He would not have minded if he had not been slapped for his misdemeanor, but he could not brook his elder brother's threat that he would not see his face any longer. Presently he wiped off his tears and going up to the door of his sister-in-law's room, said from outside, Sister-in-law, as my brother has made up his mind not to see my face hereafter, I am going away from home. I have come to you to beg pardon of you. He could not continue any further as his throat was choked with feelings. When Lal Bihari was standing with a bowed head at the door of Anandi, Shrikant, whose eyes were bloodshot with anger, arrived there. His first impulse was to avoid him. After Anandi had complained to her husband against the latter's brother, she had been feeling for poor Lal Bihari, because she was kind of heart. She never imagined that the matter would assume serious proportions. She also wondered how her husband had let himself go, for he was generally so self-controlled. She now feared that Shrikant might ask her to accompany him to Allahabad, where he worked. So when he heard Lal Bihari's plea for pardon, she was very much touched, and tears, the best solvent for washing away the dirt and dross of the mind, began to flow forth from her eyes. She then informed her husband that Lal Bihari had been weeping. Shrikant, let him. Anandi, call him into the room. I am sorry for having complained to you. Shrikant, no, I will not. Anandi, if you do not, you will have to regret afterwards. He has taken it to heart. Call him in quickly, lest he might actually go away from the home. Shrikant was adamant. Just then Lal Bihari exclaimed, Sister-in-law, convey my respects to my brother, as he does not wish to see my face. I shall not show him mine. And saying this, he retraced his steps and went out. At once Anandi emerged from her room and, following him, held him by his hand. Lal Bihari said with tear-laden eyes, Let me go. Anandi, where? Lal Bihari, where no one may be able to see my face. Anandi, I will not let you go. Lal Bihari, I am not worthy to stay in your house. Anandi, promise that you shall not go away. Lal Bihari, not till I am assured that my brother has no animus against me. Anandi, I can truthfully tell you that I at least have no grudge against you. Shrikant's heart melted with love. He went out of his room and embraced Lal Bihari. Then both the brothers began to weep bitterly. After some time, Lal Bihari sobbingly said, Brother, never again in future say that you would not see my face. You can mete out to me any other punishment you like. Shrikant replied in a tremulous voice, Let us forgive and forget. Would to God that such a sorry occasion does not arise again. Just then Beni Madhav was seen entering the house. Seeing the brothers in each other's arm, he rejoiced and remarked, Anandi, you have acted as high-born daughters do. They build what others destroy. And Anandi became the idol of the mothers and the mother in laws in the village.